Hello, you're watching UZREPORT News. I am Davron Azizov. Let's first check our top headlines for today. Some 490 people died following coronavirus outbreak. Uzbekistan starts evacuation of its citizens. President Mirziyoyev chairs meeting on development of clusters in agriculture. Several officials were criticized as they failed to accomplish their tasks. Cotton Campaign Coalition hold talks at Employment Ministry of Uzbekistan to discuss forced labor cases. As number of dead following coronavirus outbreak has reached 490 people, Uzbekistan has finally decided to evacuate its citizens. Some 250 Uzbek citizens have returned from China on Uzbekistan Airways charter flight on Tuesday. The other plane has successfully landed on Wednesday. Upon arrival in Tashkent, all passengers were placed in quarantine zone of Bostanlik district in Tashkent region.
The charter flight was organized by the decision of the Government Commission established by the decree of President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. Beijing-Tashkent air tickets are offered at a discount price, while tickets for Wuhan-Tashkent are provided free of charge. The flight was accompanied by experienced doctors and specialists. Passengers underwent a medical examination on board the plane before leaving. Upon arrival, all passengers were placed in a specially designed medical facility to prevent the penetration and spread of coronavirus in Uzbekistan and protect the health of the population.
According
to the order of the head of state, a commission was established to deal with cases related to the coronavirus. The Ministry of Health and Scientific Institutions have taken measures to prevent the spread of this virus on the territory of the Republic. Isolation boxes have been prepared at each hospital. If severe cases of this disease are detected, we will treat them. We have already trained our personnel for this purpose. In accordance with the recommendation of the World Health Organization, taking into account the incubation period of the coronavirus, our citizens from China will be subjected to strict quarantine for 2 weeks on the basis of international sanitary requirements. By the end of this period, if someone shows signs of illness, they will be immediately sent to special lab for testing and treatment. For security reasons, they are not allowed to see their families and friends during this period. In the meantime, as on Wednesday, February 5, a total of 24,324 confirmed cases of the viral pneumonia had been reported. 3,219 people remained in critical conditions. 490 people had died of the disease, and 892 people had been discharged from hospital after recovery. People suspected of getting infected with the virus increased by 3,971 on Tuesday, bringing the total suspected cases to 23,260. A total of 252,154 close contacts have been traced down, the National Health Commission of China said, adding that among them 18,457 were discharged from medical observation on Tuesday. By the end of Tuesday, 18 confirmed cases had been reported in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, 10 in Macau and 11 in the Taiwan region.
President Shavkat Mirziyoyev chaired a meeting on further development of clusters in agriculture. In October last year, he gave instructions to organize fruit and vegetable clusters, which, according to the head of state, would allow to produce products with high added value. Over the past time, local administrations have formed proposals for the organization of 86 such clusters. In the meantime, according to Mirziyoyev, the work in this direction is still falling short. He criticized several responsible persons as they inefficiently allocated land plots for cotton.
The meeting provided information about the planned capacity of clusters, the export potential and the amount of investments. The clusters provide for implementation of 96 projects for the organization of processing, storage and drying of products with a capacity of 430,000 tons. Projects have also been developed to create intensive gardens on 6,000 hectares and vineyards on about 8,000 hectares. For the current year, it is planned to export products worth $410 million. The Ministry of Agriculture received instructions to organize activities of clusters, effectively place crops based on the conclusions of foreign experts, prepare the necessary seeds and seedlings in advance, and the Ministry of Finance to provide clusters with working capital. Uzbek Ozikovkat Holding was entrusted with providing continuous assistance to clusters in finding new markets and exporting products. The meeting also discussed the improving of cotton growing clusters and phasing out the state plan for cotton and grain harvest. Along with a sharp reduction in state intervention in the sphere, it will put an end to the Hakim's pursuit of the plan and cases of forced labor. The cluster system is an important factor in the transition to market principles. To date, 73 cotton and textile clusters have been established in Uzbekistan, and last year alone their share was 73% of the cotton crop grown. The meeting set tasks to determine the legal status of clusters, introduce transparent mechanisms for their selection, and establish relationships with farmers. Mirziyoyev sharply criticized the fact that 27 clusters have been allocated more land for cotton harvest than they are able to process, and some others that have the capacity to harvest 500,000 tons of cotton fiber have not been allocated enough space. The Ministries of Agriculture and Justice received tasks to define the responsibilities of clusters and farmers and develop mechanisms for regulating their activities.
Prosecutor General of Uzbekistan Nigmatilla Yuldashev, during a meeting held on Tuesday, said that over the past 2 years, the regional administrations have illegally allocated 56,000 hectares of land. 473 criminal cases were initiated, 543 people were brought to the justice. During this period, 295 officials were brought to criminal responsibility for committing crimes related to violation of land legislation. The Independent has published its ranking of world's fastest-growing countries for tourism. Uzbekistan ranked 4th in the list, and according to UNWTO, the number of tourists in the country increased by 27.3% over the year. Myanmar, with the 40.2% tops ranking, with Puerto Rico and Iran being placed 2nd and 3rd. Last year, the number of foreign trips around the world reached 1.5 billion, which is 4% more than in 2018. Representatives of the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations of Uzbekistan met with the Cotton Campaign Global Coalition delegation. The meeting was held in the form of an open dialogue and was dedicated to the discussion of key issues of transformation in the labor inspection system, as well as the identification and elimination of forced labor cases in Uzbekistan. The international experts made recommendations for strengthening the effectiveness of the Labor Inspectorate in 2020.
The work of the State Labor Inspectorate is in many respects connected with healthcare and labor protection, social dialogue, and certainly with the fight against illegal labor. As indicated, due to the coordination with the trade unions, cases of violation were identified and administrative penalties were imposed in a timely manner. In September last year, we had organized a special commission whose task was to reveal forced labor cases. Some 77 forced labor cases have been revealed so far, and corresponding criminal cases have been opened against violators. At the same time, the work carried out during the last year's cotton campaign yielded effective results, with the most complicated cases of forced labor being addressed. Thus, administrative sanctions were imposed on 118 officials. In addition, the regional hakims were issued 225 orders, 25 recommendations, and 16 warnings concerning violations of the law. Further, the Global Coalition representatives stressed the importance of the ongoing reforms and noted perceptible change in this area. They also expressed the need to continue the reforms for the benefit of the people.
For over a week in Uzbekistan with a delegation of the Cotton Campaign with 5 women and 2 other men, and you'll hear, I hope, from several of them during the course of our discussion. I want to just recount very quickly the history and purpose of what was the motivation to create the Cotton Campaign and to put this focus, not always a pleasant one, on Uzbekistan. Several of us came together in late 2007 as reports became more widespread of the persistence of massive forced labor in cotton, forced labor going back decades to the Soviet period, indeed to the early Stalinist period. And at the same time, globally, there was a growing focus on responsible business, labor rights, forced labor in many countries around the world and in many sectors, not just cotton, not just agriculture, but in industries and regions all around the world. But what drew our attention specifically to Uzbekistan was the persistence of forced labor on a massive scale directly mobilized and organized by the government. It was that distinguishing feature which made the situation in Uzbekistan unique, apart from China, which has also at different times practiced massive forced labor. So it was for that reason that human rights advocates, trade unionists, and responsible investors and academic experts came together to form what later was called, a couple of years later, the Cotton Campaign. So the Cotton Campaign is committed to being part of solutions. We started by pointing out the problems, but we want to be and hope we are part of the solution. But you, the labor inspectors, others in other ministries, and above all, Uzbek people, Uzbek civil society, Uzbek farmers, Uzbek workers, local communities around the country, they must be at the forefront of reform because ultimately it's for their benefit.
The loan from the International Development Association in a volume of $33 million will support the institutional capacity building project in Uzbekistan, a new project which was approved by the World Bank's Board of Executive Directors in May 2019 and became effective recently, will advance Uzbekistan's transition into a market-oriented economy. The project objectives, its components and implementation details were discussed at a meeting held between the World Bank representatives and the Ministry of Finance officials.
The event was held in two parts: project presentation and a training workshop for the financial institution's employees.
We are launching today the institutional building loan. This is a credit of $33 million that's going to be coordinated by the Ministry of Finance. And the objective is to continue the World Bank support to the economic transformation of Uzbekistan. This project will support training, will support the preparation of transactions in the area of public-private partnerships, especially in infrastructure, in education and health. The objective, of course, is to improve the quality of services in these areas for the population, for the citizens. We will also support some initiatives in the area of state-owned enterprise reforms, also ultimately helping to improve the economic performance of the country, the generation of jobs, again, strengthening the living conditions of the population throughout this period of economic reforms.
The institutional capacity building project consists of three main components. The first component, improving public financial management, for which $10 million have been allocated, aims to contribute to balanced fiscal discipline, promotes achievement of public policy objectives, and institutionalized accountability. The second component, costing $16 million, aims to improve conditions for market operation of the corporate sector and will support the restructuring and right-sizing of the state-owned enterprise sector in Uzbekistan. And the third component aims to provide technical support to the Economic Council in the amount of $1 and $4 million to other public sector agencies. Today we have launched a new project with its loan amounting to $33 million. The funds will be used to improve the state budget and for the reforms being implemented by the Ministry of Finance. We are also planning to launch the second phase of this project. The funds will be used to improve the ministry's IT infrastructure. Currently there are more than 20 IT projects that do not overlap. As a reminder, as of January 1st, 2020, the World Bank's portfolio of active projects in Uzbekistan consisted of 21 projects, totaling $3.5 billion.
The national round of international competitions named after Philip Jessup in the field of international law has been launched in Tashkent. Students of the Tashkent State University of Law, the International University of Westminster in Tashkent, the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, and the Tashkent State Institute of Oriental Studies will fight for the right to represent Uzbekistan in Washington. Teams from 4 universities in Uzbekistan are going to hold their national rounds for the first time in Central Asia.
It's a real pleasure to be at the Jessup International Law Competition again in Tashkent. Very exciting because Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan students of law have come together for the first time since about 20 years. And this is a global competition where more than 700 universities take part in over 100 countries. and it really teaches students the value of international law. It's modelled on the International Court of Justice, which is the supreme organ of justice of the United Nations. And the skills that students acquire here are skills of not only understanding international law, human rights law, but also teamwork, collaboration across cultures and nations.
Currently, teams from more than 700 universities and over 100 countries participate in this competition. Only about 120 teams will advance to the final stage, which will be held in Washington. The aim of the competition is to train lawyers with perfect knowledge of international law.
That was our last report. Thank you for watching UZREPORT.NEWS. Goodbye.